Previously on Gearz.
As well. 2009, let me take you back. A bizarre incident happened at the Singapore Grand Prix, which, by the way, I'll be at this year. Zip sliding all over Singapore. You know that I'm doing a zip slide over the whole of, like, how cool is that?
It's beautiful. Well,
anyway,
so I've heard.
This was the day, September the 4th, 2009, Crashgate took off. With the announcement, this is when it was announced, from the FIA, it was going to charge Renault following claims by their driver, Nelson Piquet Jr., that he had deliberately crashed his Renault at the previous year's Singapore Grand Prix, so 2008, under team orders. The hearing was set for September the 21st, but by then Renault boss Flavio Briatore and engineer Pat Simmons had quit. Now, what had happened in the 2008 race was Fernando Alonso and Nelson Piquet Jr. were teammates within the Renault team. And the race was going pretty okay. Alonso wasn't really in the mix of winning the race. And the next minute, bang, Nelson Piquet Jr.'s car crashed. Now, Singapore is a street circuit, so it's quite difficult to get cars, out of the way if they do have an accident. Therefore, the chances of having what you call a safety car intervention are pretty high. So Nelson Piquet crashed his car, which looked like just a crash. A safety car was deployed, but amazingly, the safety car was deployed. Fernando Alonso just made his pit stop. So all of a sudden, the safety car gets deployed. Everyone gets into their order. A lot of the other cars now go into the pits to get their change their tires, etc., etc. And Alonso lands up in the lead and goes on to win the race. Now, I've got to be honest. I sat there and I thought, well, when I watched the race, I sat there and said, geez, a bit of a strange accident, because it wasn't a place where you expected a car to crash. But I honestly thought nothing of it. It was only a couple of weeks later, and when Nelson Piquet Jr. was fired and let go by the Renault team, that all of a sudden people were now questioning what had happened at the Singapore Grand Prix. And unfortunately, it turned out to be a very ugly mess for Renault boss Flavio Briatore and Pat Simmons, the technical director at the time. Eventually, what transpired, Nelson Piquet testified that he was instructed to crash on a specific lap in order to sort of manipulate the race.
That's disgusting.
It is. It's completely
Race
disgusting.
Fixing.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Renault apologized to the whole world, withdrew as a team. Okay. Flavio Briatore resigned. Pat Simmons resigned. Flavio Briatore was given a 5-year ban from any Formula One activity at all. Pat Simmons was given a 3-year ban for any Formula One activity whatsoever. And I think Pat Simmons at the end of this year is entitled to go back into Formula One. Flavio Briatore got to sit in the sidelines for a little while longer. It tainted the sport. It was an ugly episode in the history of Formula One. Something that should never ever happen. And fortunately, well, in certain ways you sit there and go, why are you ratting out on your team when, and think about this carefully, he as a driver, Nelson Piquet Jr., agreed to do it. So he's also very much to blame. He should have sat there and said, there's no ways under any conditions that I'm going to be party to this. However, he came out afterwards saying, well, he feared that he was going to lose his job, etc., etc. Little tattletale on the one side, but at least the truth actually did eventually come out. It was an ugly episode in Formula One history. 3 years ago, that is when Crashgate went out and the FIA announced they were going to charge Renault following the claims that he deliberately crashed his Renault at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. Those things at least are out of the way now. Nelson Piquet Jr. is no longer in Formula One. Came out with some ridiculous comments the other day. I mentioned them here on the show about the great Ayrton Senna. And I'll be honest, I think the sport's better off without him there as well. But also better off without the likes of Briatore at the moment for even suggesting to do something like that in the world of Formula One. So a dark day in Formula One 3 years ago. Things have cleaned up a tremendous amount since then, but you got to understand, high risk, high reward.
Can I have your...
At the next intersection, turn on
Gearz with Sasha Martinengo.
weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time.